to. But he's played, against better competition. He's got 46.
Worthy of a second-round pick for the Washington football team. I actually saw one story which said that he's a riser and could sneak into the first round. It doesn't sound like you'd want him to draft him in the first round. Would you draft him with your second-round pick?
Maybe.
Young guy.
Who else is there? I think Trask might be a better thrower. But I don't know. I would second or third, maybe. I love the fact he's played a lot of football. He's had a lot of success. I like that he scans the field a little bit. I like that he's not afraid to take chances and throw it downfield. I wish he would be a little more discriminatory with it. It seemed like he was chucking it into triple coverage a few times. And I wish his foundation sometimes was a little better on his throws, because I think when your footwork is off and you're rushed, that's when you get picked. But there's a lot to like there too. So I think he's like a third-round grade for me. That's what I would give him.
Our guy Walter has
third or fourth-round grade.
A fourth-rounder.
There's no way that Mon goes in the first round.
I have him as a third or fourth-round grade, and I don't even know what they're rating him. I'm just telling you what I saw, and I didn't like the breakdown because there was too many replays of the same plays. I was very annoyed by it.
All right, Eric, I want to put someone on your radar. We can do him in a couple weeks. He goes against everything you believe in, but and I know you don't even know who he is. His name's Davis Mills. He's the quarterback at Stanford. All right? He played 1 year. Coming out of high school, he was the number one ranked quarterback.
Why did it take him 5 years to play?
Well, he's a redshirt junior. He was behind KJ Costello, who transferred. Okay. He was a good quarterback. But he's like he prototypical, like 6'4", 225, and there's a lot of chatter about him now being QB5. That's the new thing, is like QB5 after the top four.
What do you mean by QB5? I don't quite understand.
Well, you got Fields, you got Trevor, you got Zach, and you have Lance. And the big thing is who's going to be that fifth quarterback. And there's a lot of talk about him now because he's so intriguing because he's got all the tools.
So he's like a Mitch Trubisky, played 1 year and has all the
didn't even play
tools.
a full year.
Yeah. He's a flash-in-the-pan guy.
I think he has 800 career snaps. But he's got like a rocket arm, like the strongest arm of any of these guys.
Right. So all right. No, I'm psyched. I'll do him tomorrow.
Well, we'll stretch it out a little bit.
Send it to me tomorrow. But I do stand by my grade. I would take Trask over him. Maybe I would take Jordan Love over him just because he's got a year in the system of being a pro quarterback.
I forgot we did Jordan Love.
Yeah, we did Jordan Love already.
He might be available. Hey, dude, they might pull up a trade for him. You never know.
Well, I know he's not playing in Green Bay anytime soon. Right. That I do know.
But I know, like, I'm trust me, I'm not basing it on what I think they're going to do because, like, everyone that says Trey Lance is going to be a top tenner, and I think
you're giving him a grade. Hey, the grade is in. Like, for the NFL draft, the pick is in. The grade is in. EB is giving him a 60. I know there was a decimal point in there, but basically.
No, the decimal point is very important.
60.8.
60.8. Thank you.
It's so important that you forgot it.
Yeah, well, I can't remember everything.
All right, the grade is in. Kellen Mond is 60.8. If you want to chime in.
Can we tweet out my grade so far? We need to do that. Then I'll retweet it. Drabby, can we tweet out my quarterback grades?
Yeah, we can do that.
All right, good.
All right, phone number is 800-636-1067. You can chime in. Would you want the Washington football team to take a flyer on a guy like Kellen Mond? We're the Junkies. Be right back.
No matter where you work, whether it's at your kitchen table or in the office, you need to collaborate with your team. ProConnect from Consolidated Communications makes it happen. You'll never miss a call when you can answer from your desk phone, laptop, or cell phone. And you can communicate instantly using real-time messaging. Confidently connect with customers over secure video conferencing and work together to create and share documents. Get ready to connect, collaborate, and communicate brilliantly. Choose ProConnect, your team collaboration tool from Consolidated Communications.
An excerpt from The Daughters of Yalta by Catherine Grace Katz.
It was here, in this despoiled palace, in February 1945, that Kathleen Harriman, the glamorous 27-year-old daughter of the fourth richest man in America.
Download now. Available everywhere audiobooks are sold.
Welcome back, Junkies on 106.7 The Fan. We are live on NBC Sports Washington. Of course, all year we are celebrating 25 years on the radio. Our 25th anniversary is presented by PenFed Credit Union. Whether you're in uniform or not, you can apply today at penfed.org. With Alex Smith moving on, I guess it's still not official, but everybody knows Alex Smith's not going to be part of the Washington football team. We're looking back at how Alex Smith ended up here in Washington, and that, of course, was a trade that Bruce Allen was able to pull off when he was the team president, shipped Kendall Fuller and a third-round pick to the Chiefs in 2018, January 30th, for Alex Smith. And the reason they did that is because Kirk Cousins was not going to be part of their future. And people are now looking back on that and lamenting that Kirk Cousins maybe should have been the long-term solution here in Washington and how it went wrong. How do you think things would have been different if Kirk Cousins had remained as the quarterback on the football team?
I think they would have won the division this year. They would have went to the playoffs this year.
You would have had a better quarterback at the helm
if
Kirk Cousins were here instead of Alex Smith, guy who puts up better numbers.
Do you think Gruden would still be here?
That I don't know.
They weren't winning a ton of games with Kirk. It wasn't like they were like every year in the playoffs.
But their defense was
terrible.
They were
7, 8, or 9.
If you gave him the defense that Smith had this year, I mean, I think they would have won a lot. Maybe not 11 games, 12 games, but they certainly would have been in that 8, 9, 10 range.
Here's what I'm confident enough to say. I don't think you would have seen Mark Sanchez and Josh Johnson.
Of course
you probably
not.
wouldn't have seen Taylor Heineke.
No, because Kirk plays every game.
Kirk is a durable guy. Meanwhile, Alex Smith, in 48 regular season games, started 16. 16. He started 1/3 of the games during his tenure. I mean, we understand what happened.
Right, but you got to remember, too, the Kirk deal, I mean, Washington butchered that.
Right.
But by the end,
couldn't
they
have
weren't
handled
going to
it
get him.
worse.
He didn't want to be here. He wanted to capitalize on it. He wanted to make his dough. He saw that he and his agent were seers, and they saw how they could manipulate it into some big deals.
He had big years at the perfect time in his career.
Yeah, and they ran circles around the Washington front office. I mean, Bruce Allen was in way over his head. They weren't going to
bring him back. Yeah, he didn't like Bruce. I don't think he trusted Dan.
Well, he was disrespected at every turn by Dan and Bruce.
Yeah,
because
he didn't think he could win here.
They couldn't get over the fact that he was the afterthought and that he was actually way better than RG3. Yeah. He developed into something way better than RG3, the guy they mortgaged their future for, and they just could never get over it.
No question, they would have had more success with Kirk at quarterback. There's no question. I don't think there's a single human person. A single person in the world that would argue that they'd be the same with Kirk.
But Kirk's an anomaly.
But he wasn't going to be here
because
they had no choice.
He put up some really good numbers. He's put up better numbers in Minnesota than he did here, but they've only been to the playoffs 1 out of those 3 years. So there are games where they really need him to play well that he just doesn't.
Understood.
But I think statistically, he picked the best time in his career to have big years because he capitalized on those franchise tags.
He could say all he wants with that Eddie Haskell shtick.
Yeah.
He wanted to get paid, and he wasn't going to get paid here.
Well, I think the frustrating thing, and Jason kind of alludes to it, and if you want to chime in, you can call us on the AAA Always On Call listener lines. Your thought on Kirk Cousins as we kind of look back as how did we get here to this situation with the Washington football team at quarterback? Well, it's because they made a decision. We're going to let Kirk go. The money, all of those things, he's going to go. Let's bring in Alex Smith, trade for Alex Smith. Clearly that hasn't worked out. And now we're talking about, do you draft a guy like Kellen Mond? Because they don't have a solution at quarterback. But part of it, I think, is because he was good, not great. And fans would get frustrated because some of those things that Jason talks about, not coming up big in big games, they would see that here in Washington, right? So it was frustrating. So are you okay with good, not great? It's definitely better than horrible.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Like, you want to comp him to Alex Smith? Alex Smith had 26 touchdowns in 2017. That's basically what Kirk averages. Like that's on the low average for Kirk Cousins.
I understand that, Cakes. There's no comparison when you look at the numbers and the production.
It's not even close
in recent years. There's no comparison. But I'm kind of wondering, how did we get here? And I think part of it was the organization and the fans, because fans, there wasn't like this huge protest against, like, what is Washington doing? Some fans were like that, but a lot of fans were on board with it.
Yeah.
We're on board with Kirk being gone because they had seen him and it was good, just not good enough for them. But I think in retrospect, you look at it and they haven't had even good. So it's like they didn't appreciate what they were getting. Yes, it wasn't great. It wasn't elite.
Yeah, but some of us said that at the time. That you're not. You're going to get rid of this guy, and he's a quality quarterback, and he's the best one we've had in quite a while. And it's not easy to recover from. Some of us said that at the time.
But it's also horrible luck. I didn't necessarily think it was a bad thing to trade for Alex because you had seen what you got from Kirk. All right, Kirk put up good numbers, but he was a 500 quarterback. So now you get Alex, who's not a 500 quarterback, who goes to the playoffs, doesn't put up gaudy numbers. But man, what kind of luck do you have that? In that first year, after 9 games, he breaks his leg, and then the next year he doesn't play.
That's the other question you ask. So instead of asking what would have happened if Kirk was still here, what would have happened if Alex never
didn't
got
get hurt?
Yes, that's the question.
I mean, that's a great unknown because I think they were winning games despite Alex Smith.
I think you would have gotten a lot of like 20 touchdown and 12 pick type seasons.
They would have won more
Alex
games.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have had a 4-win season.
But their defense was slowly getting better too with Alex Smith. They weren't
getting
better with Kirk.
It would have been ugly. You would have held your nose.
Didn't they have historically bad defenses with Kirk in those 3 years?
Yes. Horrendous defenses.
And remember, they also traded for Alex. So when you talk about all this, they gave up a 3rd-round pick and they gave up Kendall Fuller.
But they got Fuller back.
Eventually, they got him back. You're right.
Yeah, so you gave up the 3rd. But
I just think part of it is, I really do, is that the fans, and we deal with it every day, listening to fans on the radio. The fans wanted more from Kirk, and they never were really going to be okay with kind of good but not great.
But also, his fate was sealed. He knew that he was going to play the franchise tags, and then he was gone. He was not going to sign a long-term deal. He
just got into a price range that they weren't going to pay.
Yeah, the price range they would not pay, and he didn't want to play for Bruce and Dan any longer.
Yeah.
He didn't like those guys.
It was never going to happen.
But what's it going to take for the fan base to get completely behind a quarterback?
Who cares about the fan base?
It's got to have like an RG3-like year.
The front office has to be behind the quarterback. It's not the fan base. If you're a front office and you're listening to the fan base, you're taking the temp of the fans as far as what you're going to do with the quarterback spot, then you're doomed to win 5 or 6 games every year.
I mean, think about the last 3 franchise quarterbacks that Washington's had. RG3 has the big year, but then hurts his knee. All right, bad luck there. Now maybe he would have turned out to be a disaster anyway. And then Kirk Cousins replaces him and has 3 pretty good years statistically, but with the way his contract kind of was situated, you had to either give him a boatload of money or you had to keep franchising him, and then obviously they botched it.
And they only made the playoffs once.
And they made the playoffs once. And then you get Alex, you trade for Alex, and he gets hurt after 9 games.
And then you pick Haskins.
That's horrible luck. And then you pick Haskins.
Right.
Well, just go further back than that.
Here's a question.
Well, I'm just saying the last 9
Here's
years.
a question with RG3, just to go back over that era, because I know he stinks now, and if anybody signed him, it'd be a miracle, okay? But I still think if he hadn't gotten hurt, that you could have gotten Lamar-like production out of him. Like a healthy, pre-injury. He still had limitations.
Remember, he wasn't willing to run as much.
I know.
Remember, he didn't want to run.
If somebody hadn't gotten into his head and he had just played like he could play and then not get injured, I think he could have had a remarkable career.
Like Lamar has a gift. I mean, I know it got concussed. I think it was in the playoff game. But Lamar can avoid hits and injuries for the most part.
Yeah.
Robert couldn't. I mean, Robert was in car crashes all the time. It was just a matter of time.
He didn't even know how to slide.
Yeah.
He didn't know how to slide. But if Robert could have protected himself, he had the tools where they could have coached him up like they did in 2012. And because they still run read option and those kinds of things all over the league all the time, he could have been very successful.
Yep.
Injury and hubris doomed him.
I think Lamar is much more coachable than RG3, but
800-636-1067. Mike's in Silver
Spring.
Spring. Mike, you're on with the Junkies. What's going on?
Morning. Good morning. Of course, Kirk Cousins didn't want to be here. Bruce Allen couldn't even get his name right.
Right.
And Alex Smith had one season where he threw for 4,000 yards. I think Cousins had at least two.